Lucia rose from her chair and gently made her way toward Duke Hugo. The scent of blooming flowers lingered in the air, and the golden hues of the setting sun painted a quiet, melancholic beauty. As she opened her eyes and saw him standing there, a soft wave of emotion washed over her. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him in a warm embrace. Surprised by the gesture, Duke Hugo silently wondered, why is she acting so sweet all of a sudden? Perhaps she picked this up at the tea party. If this is the result, maybe she should attend tea parties more often, he mused, placing a light kiss on her forehead before pulling her closer in a tender embrace. Then, leaning in, he kissed her. Slowly, deliberately. "Did you enjoy the tea party?" he asked. "Yes, thank you for the gift," Lucia replied, smiling up at him. He held her face gently, scanning the room, and then his eyes landed on a single red rose on the table. His expression shifted slightly as a memory stirred. Her voice echoed in his mind. "If I ever break my promise and fall in love with you, send me a rose." That condition, one of the terms in their contract, had come rushing back. As if to hide the rose from her view, he instinctively drew her closer. "Hugh?" Lucia whispered, confused by the sudden tightness of his embrace. His mind flashed back again. That day, she had spoken with quiet conviction. "In the event I break the contract and give you my heart, send me a rose in return." Without a word, Duke Hugo suddenly lifted Lucia into his arms. Startled, she called out his name, but he only said, "Hold on," as he walked toward the window, scanning the rose bushes below. Sitting on the table with Lucia on his lap, he examined the garden carefully. "No yellow roses," he noted with relief. "The flowers," he said gently. "Do you like them that much?" Lucia nodded with a smile. "More than the flowers themselves. I was just happy you sent me a gift." "I'm glad you like them," he replied quietly, still watching her. So far, she doesn't seem to associate any hidden meaning with them, he thought. He was relieved. In his past, yellow roses were used to end relationships. That was Jerome's method. One bouquet, yellow roses only, clear and unmistakable. He had once approved it without much thought. Does Vivian know about that method too? He wondered. But looking at Lucia now, resting against him with a peaceful expression, it seemed she didn't associate the roses with rejection. Right, he reassured himself. Those were breakup roses. Yellow. Just one bouquet. Today's gift was different. Still, his thoughts drifted to the contract they signed. It had only a few pages, but one clause stood out. Complete freedom in personal life, and never fall in love with each other. Why did I insist on that condition? He asked himself, frowning slightly. He remembered her smiling face as she agreed, promising never to give him her heart. I can't breathe, he admitted inwardly. He hugged her more tightly, resting his forehead against her back. Why did I agree to those terms? He thought bitterly. What a fool I was. Hugh? Lucia called softly, sensing something was off. She turned to face him, gently lifting his chin. Is something wrong? Did the meeting not go well? Duke Hugo didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at her. This woman who had once clearly stated she would never love him, and who asked him to send a rose if she ever did. She doesn't love me, he thought, burying the sadness behind a quiet, forced smile. No, it's nothing, he said softly. I love you, Hugo, a woman once said to him, crying. Duke Hugo recalled that moment quietly as he rested his head against Lucia's back. He had heard similar words many times. What kind of expressions did those women wear when they said it, he wondered. Did I ever want them to beg like that? Just like everyone else? His grip around Lucia tightened slightly, frustration creeping into his thoughts. He found himself wondering about Vivian. If she were the one saying those words, what would I want to do? The thought led him back to the contract between him and Lucia. While the terms were clear, they had never outlined how the contract would end, or what would happen if either of them broke it. Technically, there's no legal weight to it, Hugo reasoned, and I made sure that divorce was never on the table. At least that was one smart move. Breaking the silence, Duke Hugo suddenly asked, You said you liked the gift, right? Lucia, slightly startled, nodded. Yes. If you liked it, then shouldn't you return the favor? He asked, a small smirk playing on his lips. Lucia blinked, unsure if she heard him right. So shameless, she thought. Jerome was the one who sent the gift, and yet he's asking for something in return like it was his idea. Still flustered, she asked, Is there something you want? If I say yes, can I have anything I want? As long as it's within my power, Lucia replied cautiously. He leaned in, whispering his wish into her ear. Lucia's face turned bright red as she pulled back in disbelief. No, she said, trying to sound calm despite her embarrassment. No? Hugo replied, giving her a playful look. She turned her face away, still blushing. It's almost time for dinner. It'll be quick, he said with a teasing tone, pressing a kiss to her cheek. I don't trust you, she said, narrowing her eyes. You say that like I've wronged you deeply, Hugo replied with a smirk. When did my credibility fall this low? Lucia let out a soft sigh. You should reflect on that. Without warning, Hugo adjusted her position so she was seated facing him, catching her off guard. You're really saying no? He asked, leaning in again. Lucia hesitated, her face flushed. What if someone comes in? Our butler knows better, Hugo said, reassuring her. If we don't come out, no one will disturb us. He kissed her again, more gently this time. You better be quick, she whispered, still blushing. I was thinking of doing this in the garden, Hugo said between kisses. But with all the bugs this season, Lucia, breathless, cut him off by placing a finger over his lips. If you say one more word, you'll bite my lips? Hugo asked, chuckling. Yes, my lord, she said, leaning closer. Their lips met again and he held her close. Roses? Hugo thought. Who cares about roses? Whether I send them or not, this woman is mine. The next day, Lucia sat quietly beside Jerome while her personal doctor, Anna, completed her examination. So then, my lady, Dr. Anna began, when was your last period? Lucia glanced at her, then at Jerome, who stood silently nearby. After a brief pause, she answered softly, last month. Any physical discomfort? Nausea? Morning sickness? The doctor asked, jotting notes as she spoke. Lucia shook her head. No. The room fell quiet as Dr. Anna reviewed her notes. Finally, she closed her notebook with a quiet snap. It doesn't seem like the lady is pregnant, she said. Is that so? Jerome responded, sounding mildly disappointed. Even if she were, the doctor added, it's too early to tell. She had a period just last month. Was there anything that made you suspect otherwise? No, Anna, Jerome replied. She's just seemed unusually tired lately. In that case, I'll prepare an herbal tonic to help her regain some strength, the doctor said, reaching into her bag. But before she could finish, she paused and looked at Lucia again, her tone shifting. To be honest, I believe her fatigue stems from something else entirely. Something else? Jerome asked, confused. Lucia's eyes widened, unsure what the doctor was implying. Dr. Anna gave them a meaningful glance. The human body isn't made of steel. Everything must be done in moderation. Please speak to His Excellency about that. Jerome blinked, still not following. At her age, Lady Lucia should be full of vitality. If she already needs a tonic, that's a sign her body is under strain. Both Lucia and Jerome blushed at the doctor's veiled suggestion. Rest is essential, Dr. Anna continued calmly. In all things. She turned to Lucia. It must be exhausting, isn't it, my lady? Please speak with His Excellency about pacing things more reasonably. Lucia fumbled for words, her hands clenched in her lap, her face flushed with embarrassment. What should I say in this situation? She wondered. A thought came to mind, one she would never dare say aloud. I'm actually happy that His Excellency visits me each night. But she kept those words to herself, trying to mask her expression. I see, Dr. Thirweth, Anna said, observing Lucia's discomfort. If it's difficult for you to bring up, I can speak to him on your behalf. No, I'll talk to him, Jerome interjected suddenly, breaking his silence. His face had turned red. He hesitated, then cleared his throat. So, how often is considered too much? Lucia gave him a sympathetic glance, embarrassed for him. 5 days of activity, the doctor answered matter-of-factly, holding up her fingers in 1 day of rest. I see, Lucia replied, still composed despite the awkwardness. After the examination, Lucia stepped into the corridor, her thoughts distant. Pregnancy, she murmured softly, her mind drifting to a truth she had kept hidden. There was a common plant called three-leaf mugwort, an ordinary weed found all over Xenon. When ground, it was sometimes used to stop bleeding, though not very effectively. Still, poor villagers used it in emergencies. Lucia remembered her younger self, using mugwort every time she scraped her knees. It was familiar, easy to find, and oddly comforting. She was 15 when she had her first period. One morning, she woke to find her sheets stained with blood. Why am I bleeding? she had thought, trembling. What's happening to me? Terrified and alone, she told a handmaiden, who quietly took the stained sheets to wash without explaining anything. No one told Lucia what menstruation was. She feared she was dying. Panicked, she turned to what she knew: mugwort. If it could stop her scraped knees from bleeding, perhaps it would work for this. She began chewing the bitter plant to stop the flow. Surprisingly, it worked. Each time the bleeding returned the following month, she repeated the same remedy. After about 6 months, her period stopped entirely. She didn't know the word for it then. She didn't even know what infertility was. Later, when she was married off to Count Matin, she learned the truth. I'm infertile, she realized. At first, she felt relief. With everything she endured under the Count's cruelty, at least she wouldn't bring a child into that life. She clenched her arm tightly, trying to ease the dull pain from the bruises she had suffered during her time with him. When Lucia learned there was absolutely no chance of having Count Matin's child, it was as if she had finally stepped onto solid ground after walking the edge of a cliff. She felt at peace, because even if it cost her life, she never wanted to bear the Count's child. But after her marriage ended and time passed, her thoughts shifted. Though the absence of her period hadn't bothered her before, the idea of never being able to have a child began to trouble her deeply. Lucia began searching for a cure. She visited doctor after doctor, but each visit ended in disappointment. Some were confused, others were dismissive. You ate mugwort? Why would you do that? One doctor asked in disbelief. That plant is toxic, said another. I've never seen a case like this, added a third, making Lucia feel more disheartened with each visit. No one gave her clear answers. Most weren't sure if she was truly infertile or simply experiencing unusual symptoms. Still, she continued searching, clinging to hope. But as the years passed and she grew older, doubt crept in. Should I give up? She asked herself more than once. Then, one day, she overheard a group of women talking in the village. A skilled doctor had come to town, someone with a growing reputation for helping those others couldn't. Are they talking about that wandering doctor? Lucia thought, listening closely. She remembered when he first arrived. Back then, no one believed he was a real doctor, but now his reputation had improved. Clutching her shirt tightly, she made a decision. This will be the last time, she said quietly. If even he says there's no cure, I'll give up. Lucia approached his home and peeked inside. Excuse me, she called out, a bit hesitant. The man who appeared looked plain, dressed in worn clothes, but the way he spoke and carried himself felt refined. There was a quiet dignity about him. Did your period really stop? He asked, his tone serious. Did you actually eat mugwort? Lucia nodded. She was used to doctors reacting with confusion or disbelief, but this man simply listened. Though surprised, he seemed more curious than judgmental. When did it start? How much did you take? He asked. Lucia's hands trembled slightly. Maybe, just maybe, I can be cured. Am I really infertile? She asked. Yes, he answered honestly. Lucia's voice caught. Can I be cured? She asked again, barely above a whisper. The doctor suddenly laughed, catching her off guard. I'm sorry, he said quickly, sensing her unease. Forgive me. You're actually quite lucky. He handed her a piece of paper. This is a family remedy. It's been passed down for generations. Mix the listed herbs into a medicine and take it once a month until your period returns. Lucia stared at the note. If this is a family secret, is it really all right to give it to me? The doctor was quiet for a moment before replying, I no longer need it. Lucia thought she noticed a hint of sadness in his expression, though he didn't explain further. Still, for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. Everyone told me mugwort is poisonous, she said softly. Poisonous? He echoed. That's what most believe, but mugwort actually helps cleanse the body. Its effects are strong, which can cause side effects, but it's not harmful. He continued, You haven't been sick or in pain, have you? Lucia shook her head. No. To become infertile from mugwort, one would have to take large amounts consistently from their first menstruation, just like you did. He explained. It causes a temporary pause in menstruation but doesn't lead to permanent infertility, and it's definitely not poisonous. Then he smiled gently. If you follow this treatment, you'll recover. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. I hope you have a healthy child one day and live happily as a parent. The vendor handed Lucia the groceries with a worried expression. Why are you buying these? You're not planning to mix them, are you? It's dangerous to eat them together like this, he asked. Lucia smiled faintly as she took the bag. Haha, of course not. But inwardly, she knew the truth. The prescription the doctor gave her was highly unusual. Every pharmacist reacted the same way. They must not see this combination often, she thought, her grip tightening on the bag. With nothing left to lose, she followed the doctor's orders and began preparing the remedy. Half skeptical, half hopeful, Lucia started taking the prescribed mixture. Then one day, after what felt like ages, something happened. Her period returned. That day, she was once again 15 years old, just like in the prophetic dream she had. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She already knew it wasn't an illness, and she wasn't going to die. Still, her expression darkened. Even with all this knowledge, she was still trapped in despair. I thought knowing the future would change everything, she reflected. But what could a powerless young princess locked away in a separate castle do? Nothing. To her, the future felt like an inescapable prophecy. When I turn 21, I'll be forced to marry that man again, she muttered, fear filling her eyes. No, I refuse to have his child. Even though Count Matin was likely infertile, she didn't want to risk even the slightest chance. Clutching a mugwort plant in her hand, she reassured herself, it's not poisonous anyway. I can cure myself. Even if I become infertile now, it's fine. I know how to fix it later. But reality hit her again. I told him I couldn't have children. I really thought we'd get divorced. And yet, Duke Hugo never gave her the chance. I've made up my mind. I'll endure everything. I won't have regrets, she told herself, clenching her fists. When she signed that marriage contract, the decision not to have children was already sealed. And now, the dream of becoming a happy mother, just as that wandering doctor once wished for her, felt hopeless. He had even shared a secret remedy passed down through his family. What was his name again? She asked herself, puzzled. Philip, yes, that was it. Elsewhere, Duke Hugo sat at his desk. From now on, any flower is fine. Just no roses. Make sure I never see another rose again, he ordered Jerome. Jerome tensed. Yes, Your Excellency. He remembered something. The other day, my lady asked me if I was the one sending the yellow roses, he said cautiously. Hugo stopped writing. And she asked if Lady Sophia Lawrence was the last to receive them. I said yes. Then she asked why Countess Falcon wasn't the last. I explained that you gave no such order. The Duke's pen slammed onto the table in frustration. Why would you answer her like that? He thought angrily. Jerome flinched under his intense glare. He's always so competent. What made him so clueless all of a sudden? Send them, Duke Hugo barked. You mean, to Countess Falcon? Jerome asked, unsure. Today. Right now. Yes, Your Excellency. Jerome lingered. One more thing. The Duke groaned. Why do you always have something else? What now? It's from the lady's doctor, a recommendation, Jerome said. She advised Your Excellency to refrain from visiting the lady's bedroom. What? Why would that concern the doctor? Because of the lady's health. The doctor said she needs to rest at least once every 5 days. Duke Hugo paused, suddenly uneasy. Her health. He hadn't considered it. Fine, you may go, he said finally. Left alone, he exhaled. If it's for her health, then so be it. He rubbed his hair in frustration. I really did push her too hard for over a month. Lucia's face flashed through his mind. Once every 5 days? How depressing, he muttered, clenching his fists. Thanks for watching this episode of Manhwa Royal. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more royal drama and intense twists. Until next time, stay royal.